Behind the golden mask, the chandelier cast dancing shadows across the ballroom as Celeste Moreau adjusted her emerald silk mask for the 100th time that evening. The annual charity masquerade at her family's Napa Valley estate was supposed to be magical, but all she felt was suffocated by the weight of expectation and the tight corset her mother had insisted upon. "You look radiant, darling," Vincent Cross murmured beside her, his black mask doing little to hide his calculating gray eyes. His hand rested possessively on her waist as they moved through the crowd of masked guests, each one a carefully selected piece in her parents' elaborate chess game of high society politics. Celeste forced a smile. "Thank you, Vincent." The words tasted like ash. In 3 months, she would walk down the aisle to marry this man not for love, but because Cross Technologies needed Morrow Vineyard's distribution network, and her family needed his tech innovations to modernize their century-old business. As Vincent was pulled away by his father Marcus to discuss merger details, Celeste seized her chance. She slipped through the French doors onto the moonlit terrace, desperate for air that didn't smell like expensive perfume and political ambition. The October breeze carried the scent of harvested grapes and dying roses. She leaned against the stone balustrade, closing her eyes and imagining herself anywhere else, perhaps traveling through Europe with nothing but a backpack, or studying marine biology like she'd dreamed before her parents crushed those aspirations. Running away from your own party? Celeste spun around to find a man in an intricate silver mask watching her from the shadows. Unlike the other guests in their designer tuxedos, he wore a simple black suit that somehow made him more striking than anyone inside. His dark hair was slightly tousled, and when he smiled, she noticed a small scar above his left eyebrow. "I could ask you the same thing," she replied, surprised by her own boldness. Something about the anonymity of the mask made her feel freer, more like herself. He stepped closer, and she caught the scent of cedar and something wild completely different from Vincent's overpowering cologne. "I'm not running away. I'm exactly where I need to be." There was something in his voice, a warmth that made her stomach flutter in a way Vincent never had. "And where is that?" "Talking to the most beautiful woman at the masquerade, who happens to look like she'd rather be anywhere else." Celeste laughed. A real laugh that bubbled up from somewhere deep inside her. Is it that obvious? Like to someone who knows what it feels like to be trapped in a life that doesn't fit. Before she could ask what he meant, music drifted from the ballroom, a slow waltz that her mother had specifically requested. Without thinking, Celeste found herself accepting his outstretched hand. They danced on the terrace under the stars. And for the first time in months, Celeste felt alive. This stranger moved with confidence and grace, leading her in a way that felt like a conversation rather than Vincent's mechanical precision. "What's your name?" she whispered as the song neared its end. He hesitated, then leaned close enough that she could feel his breath against her ear. "Dante." Something electric passed between them, and suddenly they weren't dancing anymore. They were standing impossibly close, her heart hammering against her ribs. When he cupped her face with gentle hands, she didn't pull away. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, then deeper as she melted into him. It was everything her first kiss with Vincent hadn't been: passionate, desperate, real. Celeste. Vincent's sharp voice cut through the night like a blade. They sprang apart to find her fiancé standing in the doorway. His mask pushed up to reveal a face twisted with rage, but it was her mother's gasp behind him that made Celeste's blood run cold. "Do you have any idea who that is, Elena Moros?" The voice was deadly quiet. Dante slowly reached up and removed his mask, revealing features that made Celeste's world tilt on its axis. She knew that face from newspaper headlines, from her father's angry rants, from family photos torn in half years ago. Dante Rossi, son of Antonio Rossi, the man who had tried to destroy her family's business 20 years ago. Unveiled secrets, though. Silence stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Celeste stared at Dante Rossi as the weight of his identity crashed over her like a cold wave. The fairy tale moment shattered into 1,000 sharp pieces. "Get away from my daughter." Lena Morrow's voice could have frozen wine mid-pour. She stepped onto the terrace, her champagne-colored gown billowing behind her like the wings of an avenging angel. "Security. Wait." Dante raised his hands, his voice calm despite the storm brewing around him. "Mrs. Moreau, I didn't come here to cause trouble." Vincent grabbed Celeste's arm, pulling her away from Dante with enough force to leave bruises. "Like hell you didn't. Your family's been trying to sabotage us for decades. That's not true." The new voice belonged to a woman who emerged from the shadows of the garden, elegant, fierce, with Dante's same dark eyes. "Though I understand why you'd think so." Helena's face went pale beneath her golden mask. "Sophia Rossi, how dare you show your face here?" Sophia Rossi stepped into the moonlight, her press credentials visible on a chain around her neck. Once of the country's most respected investigative journalists, she'd won awards for exposing corporate corruption. Celeste had read her work, admired it even, never knowing the writer's connection to her family's sworn enemies. "I dare because someone needs to tell the truth," Sophia said quietly. "The same truth my father went to his grave protecting." Cross appeared behind Vincent, his calculating mind already working. This is obviously some sort of setup. They're probably recording this conversation. Dante's jaw tightened. "We're not here for blackmail, Mr. Cross. We're here because Celeste deserves to know why her parents are really so desperate to marry her off to your son." "Enough." Lena's mask had slipped, revealing the panic in her eyes. "Guards, remove these people immediately." But before security could arrive, Sophia pulled out a thick manila envelope. "Celeste, your great-grandfather didn't die in a car accident like you've been told. He was murdered by someone in the Cross family." The words hit like lightning. Celeste felt Vincent's grip on her arm tighten, saw her mother sway as if she might faint. "You're lying," Vincent snarled, but his voice lacked conviction. "Am I?" Sophia's gaze was steady. "Then why don't you ask your father about the real reason he needs this merger so badly? Ask him about the offshore accounts, the money laundering, the bodies buried in concrete foundations." Marcus Cross stepped forward, his face a mask of controlled fury. "These are wild accusations from a family of criminals." "My father was many things, but he wasn't a criminal," Dante said, his voice raw with old pain. "He tried to expose what your family was doing and you destroyed him for it. Ruined his reputation, his business, his health." Celeste looked between the faces surrounding her, her mother's terror, Vincent's rage, Marcus's cold calculation, and Dante's desperate honesty. "What money laundering? What are you talking about?" "The vineyard, darling," Helena whispered, all her composure finally cracking. "Cross Technologies hasn't just been upgrading our systems. They've been using our distribution network to move money for some very dangerous people." The revelation hit Celeste like a physical blow. Her family's century-old business, built by generations of honest work, had been turned into a front for criminal activity. "And the marriage?" Celeste's voice was barely audible. "Makes it all legal," Sophia explained gently. "Once you're married, spousal privilege protects both families from having to testify against each other. The merger creates a legitimate business structure to hide what they've really been doing." Vincent's grip on her arm became painful. "None of this matters, Celeste. We're getting married and that's final. Like hell we are." The words escaped before Celeste could stop them. She wrenched her arm free and stepped away from Vincent, her heart pounding. Marcus's Cross smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I'm afraid it's not that simple, Miss Moreau. Your family is in very deep debt to some very impatient people. Out! This merger, without this marriage, I'm afraid there might be ... consequences." The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Celeste understood now why her mother looked so terrified, why her father had been drinking more lately, why they'd been so insistent about the wedding timeline. Dante stepped closer, his hand outstretched. "Celeste, come with us. My sister has evidence that can protect your family and put the real criminals away." "Don't listen to them," Helena pleaded. "They'll destroy us all." But as Celeste looked into Dante's eyes, the same eyes that had made her feel alive just moments before, she realized that maybe destruction was exactly what her family needed. Maybe it was the only way to build something real from the ashes. The sound of approaching sirens cut through the night, and Marcus Cross smiled wider. "I'm afraid the decision's been made for you, Miss Moreau. Dante and Sophia Rossi are about to be arrested for trespassing and harassment. Such a shame they won't be able to share their theories with anyone. The price of betrayal. The sirens grew louder as 3 police cars wound up the estate's circular driveway, their red and blue lights painting the terrace in harsh, alternating colors. Celeste's heart hammered as she watched Marcus cross his satisfied smile, understanding with crystal clarity that this had all been orchestrated. "You called them before you even came out here," she whispered, the pieces falling into place. "You knew the Rossies were coming." "Insurance policy," Marcus replied smoothly, straightening his cufflinks. "Can't have wedding crashers disrupting such an important evening." But before the officers could reach the terrace, another figure stepped. Through the French doors, Judge Theodore Blackwood, family friend for over 30 years, and the man who had officiated her parents' wedding. His usually kind face was grave as he took in the scene. "Helena, what have you done?" his voice carried the weight of decades of friendship and disappointment. Helena's composure cracked further. "Theodore, please, not now. These people are criminals. The only criminals I see are standing right beside you." The judge's words fell like stones into still water. He pulled a legal document from his jacket. "This is a federal warrant for the arrest of Marcus Cross and Vincent Cross on charges of money laundering, racketeering, and conspiracy to commit fraud." The color drained from Marcus's face. "You can't be serious. Theodore, we've been friends for years. Which is why this hurts so much." Judge Blackwood's voice was heavy with sadness. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice the shell companies?"
"Marcus, the payments flowing through the vineyard's accounts. I've been watching, waiting for enough evidence to stop you before you destroyed the Morrow family completely." Vincent released Celeste's arm as if she'd suddenly caught fire.
"This is impossible. You have no proof, actually. We do." A new voice joined the chaos as Detective Rivera stepped onto the terrace, her badge gleaming in the harsh light. Behind her came Nina Santos, Celeste's best friend since childhood, her face streaked with tears. "Nina," Celeste reached for her. "Friend, confused? What are you doing here?" "I'm sorry," Nina sobbed, pulling a small recording device from her purse. "I've been recording everything for months. The judge asked me. He knew something was wrong, but needed evidence." The betrayal hit Celeste like a physical blow, but Nina continued through her tears. "Your parents were so scared, Celeste. The Cross family threatened to have your father killed if you didn't go through with the marriage. I couldn't just stand by and watch." Helena sank into a wrought-iron chair, all fight gone out of her. "Theodore, they said they'd kill Robert if we didn't cooperate. What choice did we have?" "There's always a choice," Sophia said gently, moving to Helena's side. "My father tried to make the right one 20 years ago, and they destroyed him for it. But you still have time." Detective Rivera was already reading Marcus and Vincent their rights as other officers appeared to escort them away. Words were directed at Celeste with venomous fury. "This isn't over, girl. There are people above me, people you can't touch. Your family will pay for this." As the police cars disappeared down the driveway, taking the Crossmen with them, an eerie quiet settled over the terrace. The party inside continued, oblivious to the drama that had just unfolded outside. Judge Blackwood sat heavily beside Helena, suddenly looking every one of his 70 years. "I should have acted sooner. I knew Robert was in trouble, but I hoped he'd find the courage to come to me himself." "Where is my father?" Celeste asked. Realizing she hadn't seen Robert Moreau all evening, Helena's fresh tears gave her the answer before the words came. "He's in the hospital, darling. He had a heart attack 3 days ago. The stress, the fear, it finally caught up with him." The world tilted beneath Celeste's feet. Dante was beside her instantly, his arm around her waist as her knees buckled. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because we thought if we could just get through tonight, get you married, everything would be safe. The doctor said he might not survive surgery, and I couldn't bear to lose both of you." Nina wiped her eyes, her voice steadier now. "He's going to be okay, Celeste. The surgery went well, but he's been asking for you, the marriage contract." Sophia said quietly, "It's void now. With Marcus and Vincent under arrest, there's no legal obligation." But Celeste barely heard her. All she could think about was her father lying in a hospital bed, believing his only daughter was marrying a monster to save his life. I need to see him, she whispered. Of course. Dante's voice was gentle. But first, there's something else you need to know. About why we really came tonight. He exchanged a look with his sister, who nodded encouragingly. My father left something for your family before he died. Evidence that could not only clear your vineyard of any wrongdoing, but also protect you from the people Marcus was working. For what kind of evidence? List of names, account numbers, and transaction records that go back 20 years? Everyone who was involved? Everyone who might seek revenge now that the Cross Empire is falling? Judge Blackwood leaned forward, interested despite his exhaustion. Where is this evidence? Sophia smiled for the first time that evening. Hidden in the one place no one would think to look, in the cornerstone of the Moreau family chapel. Placed there by Antonio Rossi himself, the night before they ruined his life. As dawn began to touch the eastern hills, Celeste realized that everything she thought she knew about her life, her family, and her future had been built on lies. But for the first time in months, she felt something she'd almost forgotten: hope. Choosing sides, the hospital's fluorescent lights cast everything in harsh. Clinical white as Celeste sat beside her father's bed, holding his pale hand. Robert Moreau looked smaller than she remembered, diminished by the tangle of wires and monitors that tracked his fragile heartbeat. I'm sorry, little star, he whispered, using the pet name from her childhood. His voice was barely audible above the steady beep of machines. I should have been stronger. She should have protected you better. Don't, Papa. Tears blurred her vision. You did what you thought was right. Through the window, she could see Dante pacing in the hallway, giving them privacy while staying close enough to offer support. Nina sat in the corner, dark circles under her eyes from a sleepless night of revelations and regrets. The Rossi boy, Robert said, following her gaze. He's not what I expected. Before Celeste could respond, her younger brother Gabriel burst through the door, still wearing his tuxedo from the party. At 19, he had their father's gentle eyes, but their mother's stubborn chin, and right now both were set in hard lines of anger. What the hell is going on? Gabriel demanded, his voice cracking with emotion. Mom's downstairs crying. There. Our reporter's outside our house, and Nina tells me you kissed some guy who's supposed to be our enemy. Gabriel, please, Celeste started. No. He slammed his hand against the wall, making the monitors jump. I spent the whole night hearing whispers, watching people leave early, seeing our supposed friends avoid us like we have the plague. And now I find out Dad's been lying in this hospital bed while Mom tried to sell you off like some medieval princess. Robert struggled to sit up straighter. Son, you don't understand the position we were in. I understand that you made deals with criminals. Gabriel's voice rose dangerously. I understand that instead of trusting your own children, you decided to handle everything yourselves and nearly got us all killed. The heart monitors beeping accelerated, and Celeste shot her brother a warning look. Gabriel, enough. This isn't helping anyone, isn't it? Gabriel turned to face her, his eyes blazing. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like the only person who told you the truth was the son of the man Dad's been calling our enemy for my entire life. A knock at the door interrupted them. Detective Rivera appeared in, her expression apologetic. But urgent. I'm sorry to disturb you, but we need to talk. All of you. She stepped inside, followed by a man in an expensive suit who looked distinctly uncomfortable in the hospital setting. This is Agent Morrison from the FBI. We've discovered some complications. Agent Morrison cleared his throat, consulting a tablet. The arrests of Marcus and Vincent Cross have triggered what we call a dead man's switch in their organization. It appears they were middle management in a much larger operation, and their bosses are ... unhappy. What does that mean for my family? Celeste asked, though she already dreaded the answer. It means you're in immediate danger, the agent replied bluntly. We've intercepted communications indicating that orders have been given to eliminate anyone who might testify against the organization. That includes all of you. Gabriel sank into a chair, the fight going out of him as quickly as it had come. So what do we do? Detective Rivera exchanged a look with the FBI agent. We can offer witness protection, but it would mean leaving everything behind. New identities, new lives, complete separation from anyone you've ever known, said firmly. struggling to sit up despite the protests from his heart monitor. I won't let them drive us from our home, our heritage. There has to be another way. Agent Morrison nodded slowly. There is. But it's risky, and it requires complete cooperation from all of you. He turned to Celeste. Miss Morrow, we understand. You have a relationship with Dante Rossi, whose sister possesses evidence that could bring down this entire network. If you're willing to work with us, we can use that evidence to not only protect your family, but to ensure these people never threaten anyone again. What kind of work? Celeste asked suspiciously. The kind that involves pretending your engagement to Vincent Cross is still on, Detective Rivera explained. The organization doesn't know yet that we have their records. We can make them believe. The marriage will still happen. We can draw out the real players. Gabriel stood up abruptly. You're asking her to be bait? I'm asking her to be a hero, Agent Morrison corrected. But yes, there would be significant personal risk. Celeste looked. At her father's worried face, her brother's protective stance, Nina's fearful expression. Then her eyes found Dante through the window, and she saw him watching her with a mixture of admiration and terror. What would I have to do? Continue with the wedding preparations. Act as if nothing has changed. Meanwhile, we'll be monitoring all communications, tracking financial transfers, identifying the key players. When they show themselves at the wedding, we'll be ready, Detective Rivera finished. But Celeste, if you do this, there's no guarantee we can protect everyone. These people have killed for far less. The room fell silent except for the steady beep of monitors and the distant sounds of hospital activity. Celeste felt the weight of everyone's expectations, their fears, their hopes for the future. How long do I have to decide? Agent Morrison checked his watch. The wedding is scheduled for next week. If we're going to do this, we need to start immediately. Celeste closed her eyes, thinking of Dante's kiss under the stars, of her father's apology, of the life she'd dreamed of living beyond the walls of obligation and fear. When she opened them again, her voice was steady. I'll do it. But I have conditions. Name them. My family stays together no matter what. And Dante, he's part of this operation, not just his sister. Agent Morrison frowned. Miss Morrow, involving civilians in federal operations is exactly what you're asking me to do, she interrupted. If I'm going to pretend to marry a criminal, to catch bigger criminals, I want the man I actually care about close enough to help keep me sane. Gabriel reached for her hand. Celeste, you don't have to do this. We can disappear, start over somewhere else. She squeezed his fingers. And spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders? No, it's time someone in this family stopped running from the truth. Through the window, she saw Dante straighten, as if he'd sensed her decision. In 1 week, she would walk down the aisle toward Vincent Cross, knowing it might be the last thing she ever did, but she would not walk alone. Dawn of truth, the morning of the wedding dawned gray and threatening, with storm clouds gathering over the Moreau estate like an omen. Celeste stood before her bedroom mirror, adjusting the pearl necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. One piece of jewelry she'd chosen to wear that actually meant something to her. The wedding dress hung behind her like a beautiful white lie, all silk and lace and false promises. In 3 hours, she would put it on and walk down the aisle to marry a man in federal custody. While FBI agents disguised as wedding guests watched for killers in the crowd, a soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Come in. Father Miguel entered. His weathered face creased with concern. The elderly priest had baptized her, given her first communion, and had been preparing to officiate her wedding until everything fell apart. Now he carried the weight of secrets that stretched back decades. I've come to hear your confession, child, he said gently. Settling into the chair by her window, Celeste turned from the mirror. I'm not sure confession is what I need right now. Father, perhaps not, but I have one to make to you. His hands trembled slightly as he folded them in his lap. I knew your great-grandfather, Celeste. I was there the night he died. Right. The words hit her like ice water. Father, what are you saying? I was young then, newly ordained, working late in the chapel when I heard shouting from the vineyard office. I saw them Marcus Cross's father and two other men dragging your great-grandfather toward his car. His voice broke. I should have intervened. Should have called for help. Instead, I hid like a coward. Celeste sank onto her bed. The revelation, adding another layer to the web of lies that had shaped her family's history. Does my father know? I told him years later, when his own troubles with the Cross family began. It's why he was so afraid. He knew exactly what they were capable of. Before Celeste could respond, her bedroom door burst open. Isabella Chen, the lawyer Agent Morrison had recommended, strode in wearing a sharp business suit and carrying a briefcase that looked like it could stop bullets. Sorry to interrupt, Isabella said briskly, but we have a problem. Vincent Cross posted bail an hour ago. Father Miguel crossed himself. Mother of God, how is that possible? Celeste demanded. Agent Morrison said his lawyers found a technicality. Vincent will be at the altar in 2 hours, and our surveillance suggests the real power players in the organization plan to be there too. Isabella's expression was grim. This wedding's happening whether we're ready or not. Celeste's phone buzzed with a text from Dante. Stay strong. I'll be watching every second. She looked at the priest and the lawyer, two people who represented different kinds of faith in justice and redemption. Father Miguel, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Of course, child. If I go through with this, if I say those vows to Vincent knowing they're meaningless, am I committing a sin? The old priest was quiet for a long moment, then smiled sadly. Christ himself said the truth will set you free. Sometimes, child, we must walk through darkness to reach the light. Isabella checked her watch. Speaking of walking, we need to get you ready. The FBI has the chapel wired for sound and video. Every word, every gesture will be recorded. An hour later, Celeste stood at the back of the chapel in her grandmother's wedding dress, her arm linked through Gabriel's. Her brother had insisted on walking her down the aisle since their father was still too weak to leave the hospital. You don't have to do this, Gabriel whispered as the wedding march began to play. We can still run. No more running, she whispered back. And they began the long walk toward the altar. The chapel was packed with faces she recognized, family friends, business associates, and several people she was certain were federal agents trying to look festive. Vincent waited at the altar in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, his smile cold and triumphant despite everything that had happened. But it was the figure she spotted in the back corner that made her heart steady, Dante. Disguised as a photographer, his eyes locked on hers with fierce determination. Father Miguel began the ceremony, his voice carrying clearly through the chapel as hidden microphones captured every word. When he reached the traditional questions, Celeste felt time slow down. Do you, Vincent Cross, take Celeste Moreau to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Vincent's voice was confident, possessive. And do you, Celeste Moreau, take Vincent Cross to be your lawfully wedded husband? The chapel fell silent. This was the moment, the point of no return. Celeste looked at Vincent's expectant face, then let her gaze drift to Dante in the back of the room. I do not, gasps echoed through the chapel. Vincent's face went white with shock and rage. I cannot marry a man who has threatened my family, who has turned our business into a front for criminals, who represents everything I was raised to stand against. Her voice grew stronger with each word. I will not be part of this lie anymore. Vincent lunged forward, but Gabriel stepped between them. At the same moment, FBI agents throughout the chapel revealed themselves, weapons drawn. Vincent Cross, you're under arrest for violating the terms of your bail, Agent Morrison announced from the front pew, but the real surprise came when Detective Rivera appeared at the chapel doors with 4 men in handcuffs, including a face Celeste recognized from newspaper photos as one of the most wanted criminals in the country. Thanks to Miss Morrow's cooperation and the evidence provided by the Rossi family, we've just completed the largest takedown of organized crime in state history, the detective announced. As chaos erupted around them, arrests, guests fleeing, Vincent screaming threats, Dante appeared at Celeste's side. Are you okay? He asked, pulling her away from the mayhem. I think so. She looked down at her wedding dress, then back at him. This is probably not how most people end their wedding day. He smiled, the same warm smile that had captivated her on the terrace. Most people don't take down criminal empires on their wedding day either. 6 months later, Celeste stood in the same chapel, but everything was different. Her father fully recovered, walked her down the aisle toward Dante, waited with tears in his eyes and a smile that promised forever. The vineyard had been cleared of all criminal connections and was thriving under new management. The Cross properties had been seized and sold, with the proceeds going to victims of their crimes, and his father Miguel pronounced them husband and wife. Celeste knew that sometimes the best love stories began not with a fairy tale, but with the courage to tell the truth. When Dante kissed her, it tasted like freedom.